Okay, so here we are looking at a new type of question for um, our unit on the Age of Enlightenment, Unit 2, Part 1. If you're one of my students, if you found this online, either as part of your review for the Age of Enlightenment or for Regents review, this is helpful for that as well. I will link in YouTube to this document. It's page 7 in your packet, though, if you're one of my students during the school year. And um, you can kind of follow along as you do it. I'm not going to give you straight up exactly what you should type, but I'm going to kind of walk you through how you can approach this question. So, the first question on the CRQs, the short answer on your Regents exam, again, 28 multiple choice, and then you have the 7 points worth of CRQ points, constructed response questions. The first one of each set is either going to be where you explain the historical circumstances or where you, and I will highlight that, right, historical circumstances, or explain the geographic context. Now, geographic context, we'll talk about it at a different time in a couple units. But historical circumstances, basically, what you can think of there. Ooh, last time I did this, it was purple. Okay, that's something. It's background information, right? That's what you should think. Background information. Ooh, I like the dark blue better. There we go. I don't know why it moved. So explain background information. This is a hard point to get if you don't know stuff, right? There are some of these points that you can get just by using skill. You need to know some stuff about whatever this was, right? So we're going to kind of go through this as we go. Um, First thing, when we approach a document, look at the sourcing information. This is John Locke, and it says the second treatise of government. So we have Locke and his second treatise of government. I don't know why this isn't doing anything for me. Let me try again. There we go. So I see Locke's name, and I think things like democracy, and I think things like, I'm going to try to make this a little smaller because it's way bigger than we need it to be. I also think things like um, life, people have the rights to life, liberty, and property. Um, Other things that I probably won't write down just because I don't have space. Well, you know what? I'll do it up here. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to leave it for now. I'll add some more stuff in later. But these are the things I'm thinking. That's what I know he wrote about. That should be like your word association kind of. So explain. We're going to read the question next. So we looked at the sourcing info. We're going to read the question next. Explain the historical circumstances that led John Locke and other political philosophers to develop political ideas such as those expressed in his second treatise of government. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Historical circumstances. So if you don't understand the document, it's not a really big deal because all they're saying is what led John Locke to develop his ideas. That could just be a short answer question with no document. Now they give you the document so that if you don't know things about Locke, but you're like, oh, these ideas, I remember when stuff like this happened, that you can use it, right? One other thing, or some other things that I want to make sure I say here. What is happening? There we go. The government should protect people's rights. And remember, he also says from our class time, and again, you should wait to do this until we've talked about this part in class. I don't know why I can't seem to get this to move. Why? All right, well, whoop. That happened one time before. I don't remember why. Uh-oh, all my stuff went away. But hopefully you wrote it down. You can go back if you want to. Um, the government has or the people have a right to overthrow the government if they don't protect it. Okay, so let's read the document. So this is so the one thing I want to say is he wrote out a list of things. So this number being here, honestly, kind of confusing. I don't love it. It's just the 95th thing he wrote. Don't get confused by this, but it wasn't 95 men as it sometimes makes it seem like. So that's not what they were saying. Um, but this excerpt is taken from John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, which was originally published in 1690. Men, being, as has been said, by nature free and equal and independent, no one can put out of this estate and subject it to the political power of another without his own consent. So people are governed by their people's consent. In other words, the government comes from the people. The only way whereby anyone divests or surrenders himself of his natural liberty and puts on the bonds of civil society is by agreeing with other men to join and unite into a community for their comfortable, safe, and peaceable living one again amongst another, in a secure enjoyment of their properties, and a greater security against any that are none of it, not of it. This any number of men may do, because it injures not the freedom of the rest. They are left as they were in the liberty of the state of nature. When any number of men have so consented to make one community or government, they are thereby presently incorporated and make one body politique, wherein the majority have a right to act and conclude the rest. Okay, so there might be some things in there you're like, I don't know what that means. Remember, all you really need to do is say, what led John Locke to write this? What led to John Locke saying the stuff he said? But you need to know stuff about John Locke. All people are free and equal, right? That kind of a thing coming up again and again. So, things to consider as you write about this. First of all, you should have, I would say, to go to when I teach AP courses, I usually say things like 2 content rich sentences. Have a bunch of stuff, right? The historical circumstances that led John Locke to develop these ideas is, there you go. So what are things we could write about? Well, you could talk about the fact that he is kind of responding to an era that you talked about in Global 9 called the Age of Absolutism. So you could write about how many governments were governed by divine right monarchs, and tell me about what that is. Right, the permission comes from God. We just talked about one. If you're doing this during the course of a year, we talked about Louis the 14th, the Sun King, a little bit in our World in 1750 unit. You may have talked about him. You should have talked about him in Global 9 when you talked about the Age of Absolutism and divine right monarchs, and you talked about people like Louis the 14th. So it's out of that and the prevailing governments, mostly, not entirely, but mostly that type of government in Europe. Uh, we'll leave it there. I won't overcomplicate it, but mostly that type of government that we have these Enlightenment writers. So then you can talk about in the Enlightenment, people like John Locke wrote about ideas like equality, like democracy, that government comes from the people, that the government only has their power because of the consent of the governed is an expression or a phrase you may see a lot. So that's one way you can approach this, right? Out of the Age of Absolute and Divine Right. Another thing you could write, though, is about the scientific revolution. The scientific revolution, something from Global 9 as well, is where you have these questioning the natural laws of the universe, right? We have the scientific method and guys like Galileo questioning the universe, questioning what was known about the human body, the world around us. And out of that comes this movement applying these natural laws to society. So investigating the natural laws in society leads people like John Locke and other people, Montesquieu, Rousseau, all those other people we're talking about here, to say that in natural laws in a state of nature, the best kind of government is with the consent of the governed, right? So you could, I personally would approach it either of those two ways. Now, you could dive even deeper on this. I'm not going to in this video because you don't need every response, but you could go even deeper and talk about like the English Civil War and the Glorious Revolution and all of that. If that's what you remember, cool. But I just gave you two ways you could approach this question, where you write about different things that led up to this background info. I would say 2 sentences give a full answer, and this is one you either get credit or you don't. So page 7 of your packet, I would do that right now as you watch this video or after you watch this video, and we'll be taking this in our next unit and kind of creating a complete set, document set with the French Revolution in a cause and effect relationship. So we'll do that. That'll be what we do in our next unit with a future video, which I will eventually, once it's created, link in this video if you are watching this on YouTube.